come down to this. If we work well as a country, we create that sense of unity. And unity is not just supporting a team on the rugby field, once a month or whatever, but just a sense of we're moving in one direction as a country. So that's why I'm here with this panel. I hope many of you are here for the same reasons, because I think the issue of unity and its initial point, your transformation, is critical, and they're very, very linked. One can't really do without the other, right? Let me introduce you to the guests or the panelists very, very quickly, right? The gentleman on first to my left here, Reverend Edwin Arison, is the General Secretary of the Kairos Southern Africa. Appreciate you giving up your time for us, right? Next to him, we have Maulana Abbas Mkhize, who's the chairperson of TBDSA, which is an acronym for the Township Business Development South Africa. Next to him is Andile Mtugama, who's been involved in the EFF, is not there anymore, therefore there's no red caps, as you've noticed, right? But certainly has a very strong, let's call it a Steve Bikoist, black consciousness background. That's really where he comes from. And Nadia Mir is on my extreme left. She's the director of Ukusa Designs, right? So that's the four. We do have one person missing. You'll notice from your notes, Nkosi Kolile Ndevu is not here from Controlesa. Unfortunately, he missed the flight, so he can't be here, which I think is a huge pity. But the good news is you are here. Let me tell you what I want to do, right? So you people understand this. Some of you have watched some of the other panels earlier on. We've got 1.5 hours in total. The initial plan is 30 minutes with the group here, where they give opening lines. Then there's interaction between myself and them, and then all of you. I actually literally want to change the rules. We'll probably give them 3 minutes each. I've already told them we're going to interrupt them if they talk too long, because I don't want them to talk too long. I rather have robust debates than lecture room style. It's the only way I know. Okay, and it's the way that I think will work for all of you. So when you get a chance to ask questions, the same will apply. I want questions, and I do not want commentary. That's very, very important. Commentary, however, I encourage if you're going to tweet. I think social media, if you understand the impact of what happened last week with Alistair Sparks, when he spoke on TV, he spoke to a narrow TV audience. But very quickly, his comments, however you want to interpret it about Verwoerd, the bigger audience was on social media. Very, very quickly. So second screen became bigger than first screen. Now, all of you, don't discount how important you are. You can tweet, and what I'd encourage you to do is, well, first of all, if you tweet to me, I'll definitely retweet you. Let me get that right. Number two, the hashtag, which is, what is it? MCSC, right. 2015 is what you need to use extensively. And you will find many of the guests as well, the panelists have Twitter handles. Andile certainly has one. If you follow my last week, you'll pick it up already. Maulana Abbas has got one as well. Nadia doesn't, unfortunately, but you can just mention the name. And from the Reverend side, the Kairos Institute certainly has a Twitter handle which you can follow as well. It would be great if you do that. Now, what I'd love, I'm not going to force you, what I'd love you to tweet about, is tweet about their comments. Because what people are interested in is not like the atmosphere was nice. They have important things to say, which you're going to agree or you're going to disagree. Tweet about what they are talking about, because then you're creating the second screen, which actually means you're delivering to an audience beyond the four walls of where we are. And isn't that in essence why we're here in the first place? To break the literal boundaries of the problems we have in our country to reach out to a further audience. Okay, so that's how we're going to do it, right? Okay, I'm not going to waste too much time giving long stories about each one of them. The notes are there, you guys can check it out. From my point of view, I'll just simply say this. My name's Ashraf Garda. Yes, I do a talk show on SFM radio. Yes, I present a special assignment. Yes, I've come from community radio. Yes, the most important thing that you need to know about me is that I'm absolutely committed to making this a great country. I'd love to have a situation where one day in the world, when we talk about the great country, and this is my challenge, when we talk about the great countries in the world, because I get tired, for example, when I interview people and they say, well, this works. And so how do you know it works? They say, well, it's been tested in the USA. Or it works because they're using it in the UK. Or the Aussies are doing it well, so it must work. My personal dream is I want a guy from Australia. I want somebody from Afghanistan, somebody from Yemen, somebody from the USA, somebody from Brazil to say, this thing works. And when someone says, how do you know it works? You say, well, it's tested in South Africa. That's the great dream. It's what I call, it's something I'm part of. It's a movement that I call Champion South Africa, and I want us to be the champion country in the world. That's just me. More than that, you don't have to know about me. What's more important is what this team has to say. And I think we're going to have a really, really good time. Okay, so let's get with it then. I need to check my time as well. Let me just, okay, let's get cracking. I'm going to start, because you're the very first person here, with the thoughts. Now, it's an interesting one. It says transforming society and uniting the country. But amongst the brief we were given was, don't worry about too much about now. Look at end goals. How do we actually get to that position where society would be transformed and the country is united? Now, how we get to that, I don't know. We're going to see about it, and I'll try and focus on that as much as I possibly can. Okay. So we'll start with Reverend Edwin Harrison. 3 minutes. Literally say whatever you think you want to say according to that theme. Transforming society and uniting the country. I'll probably throw in the word how to, which is not in the brief. How to transform society and how to unite the country. But go ahead and you need to put on the mic as well, right? You just need to switch that on there. Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairperson, and Assalamu alaikum. Good afternoon, everyone. It's wonderful to be with you. One of the other things I do, which is not in the program, is to be I'm the chairperson of the National Coalition for Palestine, and perhaps the chairperson might think this is something that divides the country, but I want to tell two stories. I think as an introduction, I'll say more at another time about this. The first story I want to tell is what is happening in Cape Town at the moment. We are in the process of building a Palestine museum. Some of you might know this, some of you might not know this. But as you know, there's not many Palestine museums across the world. This is going to be quite unique. There are many Holocaust museums in every city almost. And of course, I've been to the one in Cape Town. And so last year, I actually met with the CEO of the Jewish Board of Deputies, and I told him about this museum, and I said, I really do hope that we will be able to talk to one another in the city around this. Because I do believe that there is, beyond just being kumbaya-ish and trying to just be nice to one another, I think there is a need to be honest, and I think there is a need to actually speak to one another about real things. And so for me, if you want to unite this country, build this country, transform this country, I think it's about being honest and having good, courageous conversations with each other, building a relationship in that way. So that's just on the one hand I want to say. Then I'm a priest of the Anglican Church. And just the mere invitation for me to be here today and just my presence here, I think is already in some way a description of what this panel is about. And I think, in fact, you are much more progressive, I think, than Christian people are. It's not very often that we have Muslim people speaking at our conferences. And I'm certainly going to challenge our constituency much more on that. But I want to just briefly say this, that yesterday I was at the University of the Western Cape, where we had what was called an AHA Indaba. AHA. And AHA stands for Authentic, Hopeful Action Against Poverty, Unemployment, and Inequality. And the whole idea with AHA is that we form a civil society movement, not connected to political parties, but a civil society movement where, from the church's side, we take a certain responsibility. The Muslim community can take a certain responsibility, the business community can take a certain responsibility, but that we engage in authentic, hopeful actions to ensure that we end. I do not think that we are going to have any social cohesion in this country if we allow the levels of poverty, the levels of unemployment, and the level of inequality to continue the way it is at the moment. And so, if you were to ask me how, my first answer is, let us together build a civil society movement. A civil society movement where we can all be part of that movement, where we can play different roles, but we can actually all be part of that movement. And so even though those two things might sound quite distinct from each other, the one is on Palestine, the other one is on AHA, I do think that it is both about first of all, building relationships, having conversations, and then acting together. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for that. And you're exactly Exactly 3 minutes. Very impressed. Yeah. Okay. Well, there we are. Let's move on then to Maulana Abbas Mkhize, so the chairperson of the Township Business Development South Africa. Maulana Abbas, go ahead.
Thank you very much, Ashraf. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Perhaps let me begin by saying that on the issue of transforming society, we should be asking a question: what in society needs to be transformed? And once that is identified, to then ask the following question as to where should this transformation take us? And again, the issue of uniting the country is not a question that can be answered in a vacuum. When our country finds itself in inequality, where the majority of the people of this country are disadvantaged to date and are not tasting the fruits of democracy which was earlier anticipated. So it's very important that we identify with underlying issues. And perhaps taking advantage of this conference being a Muslim civil society conference, I would base most of my arguments or suggestions or views as a Muslim leader of my community and as a Muslim individual of what I see as the gaps which makes our dialogue or our endeavor for unity and transformation impossible. One is that the entire framework we find ourselves as a country, in my view, is flawed. Just as this country has identified with the evils of apartheid, perhaps it might have been convenient because it was in the hand of white. So it was easy to fight it because it was black against white and the system itself was evil, so it had to be defeated. Equally so, you find in the new dispensation of democracy, society finding itself in very oppressive systems. Capitalism, for an example, that disadvantages the poorest of the poor, wherein daily you would see the rich getting richer, the resources of the country being looted, and the wealth of the country being exported, and the people and the majority masses of this country being exploited as a result. I mean, as a chairperson of TBD, we are relating with the voices on the ground of people who are saying that a wealthy person, take for an example, if I want to start a small business for survival, I'm talking about a person who does not even have food to eat today, and he wants to free himself of his circumstances of poverty by endeavoring in some form of activity, and he wants a loan. Now, what is the cost of that loan to him as a poor person? What are the requirements for him to even access the money to begin with? You find that it sometimes, in fact, by admission of government, the economic development released a statement to say that it cost a poor person 208% of gross amount in interest to pay for a little loan that he borrows. And that is immoral, Islamically. And we have a responsibility as a Muslim community to advocate for the values embedded by our Sharia. We have OCA, for example, which focuses, amongst other programs, aspects of Qardan Hasan, where you borrow with no interest charged. And through that approach, will it not make us more relevant as a Muslim community in a broader society if we were to actually advocate for that position, to say that this is how we will intervene on the injustices by the system? Thank you.
I'm going to have to wrap up now because we will pick up on those things as well.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, the third of the panelists, then. The third of the panelists, Andile Mtukama. Go ahead, Andile.
Thanks, Ashraf. And also, I want to thank the Muslim community for inviting me. I was just thinking now, it is good to also listen to voices that are seen as marginal or slightly part of the project. And if we have this courage at this level, hopefully in broader society, and for me, that will be part of the answer. In broader society, we can have the capacity to listen to voices that don't make us necessarily comfortable. I see I'm a former member of a political party, but also political parties needed to get the same kind of possibility. I just want to zero in for me on the concept of unity. I don't think we can solve the problems of society without having conceptual clarity. And here I want to zero in just on the question of unity. Unity of whom? For what? And what was the original condition of division? You see, in South Africa, we don't ask the original question. What brought us here? And I want to propose that two fundamental moves. One is the creation of modern South Africa out of three dispossessions: the dispossession of land, the dispossession of labor, and the destruction of the African personhood. That is the one thing which creates white supremacy. Today, South Africa is a white supremacist reality. That is why black people are landless, poor, in township, in squatter camps, and white people are in the cities and so on, and they own the economy. More than 80% of the land is owned by white people, and we literally are their workers. We are servants in our own country. That is the South African problem. You are not going to solve the current problems without understanding that fundamental question. So unity of what? I say unity of progressive people. I'm, in a sense, suggesting division. We need a division on the basis of clarity. Those who want change against those that must be defeated. The oppressed against the oppressor. Not this Mandela project, oh, let's hug each other and it's nice and so on. That is why we where we are. 1994. So if I were to fast track, the historical problem has not been resolved by the 1994 reconciliation without justice. That's what happened in 1994. So what happened is the ANC basically take over the apartheid anti-black states, manages it, and benefits. Yes, black people who manage the anti-black state benefit as politicians, as ministers, and so on. That's why we can kill people in Marikana. So the solution probably will have to come back to that. I don't think we can talk about solutions without characterizing South Africa correctly as a settler, anti-black, racist society managed by black people. Once we understand that, then we go to the next question: how do we obliterate? I did not mention one more problem, which is the African dimension of our historical question. The colonial question as it relates to the border, and that is why we have people call xenophobia, which I call Afrophobia. So there are two main problems here: white supremacy created by settler regime here, and the colonial question represented by the border in the broader African situation. And we have to come back to how we resolve these two questions. I'll stop there.
Okay, thank you. I hope you're tweeting that last quote, because that's profound, whether you agree with it or not. Something like, we have a settler anti-black society managed by black people. You may or may not agree, but it's going to certainly get you thinking, isn't it? That's Andile Mtukama. Thanks for that. Let's move on to the last of the panelists for now. Nadia Mir, the director of Ukusa Designs. Nadia, go ahead.
Nation building is generally seen as a three-legged stool, with security, governance, and development as the three legs of the stool. But I would like to focus on culture being the fourth and looking at it rather like a table with four legs. Culture is what defines us. It makes us who we are. And we need to look at what's happened now in how we're defining ourselves. If we go back to the Freedom Charter, which is what plotted the way currently, in 1912, the ANC followed this non-ethnic, non-racial approach and tried to get everyone in the new South Africa to fly one flag, a new flag, and did that really work? We were so disparate. We came from very different backgrounds, and we had our own challenges, and it didn't work as we see it right now. We called the Rainbow Nation, coined by Archbishop Tutu, the Rainbow People of God, many colors under one umbrella, and we were meant to be this new imaginary nation that was going to be, going to be the future. But apartheid South Africa had divided us, and by us not looking at the root causes, like Andile was alluding to, us not examining that we can't just forget who we are and embrace this one new culture. Culture is made up of all these different elements with different people with different backgrounds. That has caused some of the problems. So now, 20 years on, we need to start asking these questions relating to the value of what we've been through and our roles in shaping our identity, our national identity as South Africans, their differences within the different communities, if we look at it that way. And I'd like to focus on the perspective of using art and arts as a unifying tool and arts as a way to bring about a new sort of platform where people can engage in an easier way. It's a neutral platform. It's something that's a little less threatening. And looking at our current cultural heritage and our identity as a basis for what can be experienced. Arts have a huge role to play, and there's so many different aspects that we could speak about, but with my time limitations, I prepared a presentation, but I'm going to try to just skip through and give you the headings that I'd like to unpack in our discussions later. Art is an important way to raise awareness, and it's a tool that could be used in cultural diplomacy, also in transformation. Community arts projects could have a huge social impact, and on the participants as individuals has a huge benefit in terms of their health and well-being. If you think about a person who singing alone and then singing in a choir, it has a huge therapeutic value to doing a lot of the exercises. A painter, for example, or other artistic pursuits, you get so fixated and you focus on one activity that you shut out all the problems that you have. So art is also a healing tool. Art also has, and when I'm speaking about art, I'm talking about it in a broader context. We're talking not just the visual arts, we can talk about performing art. We look at also the economic impact that can happen in a community where artists are producing products that could be sold. Tourism, for example, where there are people that are producing these products. People are interested in looking at the heritage value of these things. The aesthetic value of people getting together in their own communities and beautifying their area, working together. It just sets a tone to bring people together and to improve things and make you feel better.
Thank you very much. And so just a big hand to all the panelists so far in terms of the opening lines. I have to tell you, in terms of time management, superb, okay? We're on like 18 minutes in total. Very, very impressed, right? what that means, there'll be more chance for you guys to interact. That's really what I wanted. Okay? So I'm going to just sit this way so you can hopefully see me better. Yeah, I shouldn't. Well, I've got a priest next to me, so we're okay. Right. This is what I want to do for the next 20 odd minutes or so. We'll just chat between each other, and then at some stage I'll move on to the audience as well, right? I want to start, interestingly enough, with the last thing, Nadia, which is, you see, for arts, I read culture, I read sport, okay? And if you ask most people in the country about transformation, the most pronounced transformation initially was sport. Like within a day of some sort of, before we even voted, I think South Africa went to the Barcelona Olympic Games. Within a couple of weeks, we were off to India to play cricket. The 1992 World Cup, I think we were off to play for the first World Cup, and we still didn't vote as a unified country, right? For whatever reason, there were people, whoever they are, and I had a chat with Sam Ramsamy just last week in Devon, but in general, the new dispensation not yet coming in, there was a sense that the soft areas, art, sport, culture, if we can be united there, we're okay. I think generally many of us also wave that same flag. What are your thoughts about that? So what I'm asking, and I'll run through with everybody, the impact of art and culture and sport, and can actually paper over the cracks which exist then and still exist 21 years later.
Well, yes, I definitely agree with that. I think that it has a huge role to play in terms of the way arts and culture is also set up. It's the Department of Arts, Sports, Recreation, as the Sports, Arts, Culture, and Recreation. So all those, essentially work together. If you look at the high rate of unemployment and the frustration, and particularly in the townships and areas, they're denied access to recreation facilities.
Yeah, but my question to you, and I'm going to interject, there's a way I want to do it, right, is does it solve the problems? When I say art, the sense of like, so we've got this wonderfully colored flag, and it's a beautiful flag, right? Or we this rainbow nation, or we support,
and the national anthem.
Yeah, or we support the box, and Mandela wearing Francois Pienaar's top. I mean, that falls into art, stroke sport, stroke culture. And those were all symbols that certain people used to give us a sense of, hey, we are one country. So overnight, you didn't wear a Springbok top and you suddenly wore the top. Now my question to you is, did it work then? And does it work even now?
I think it's worked then, and it's worked at certain times quite successfully, like when we hosted the World Cup. But it's not sustainable. We actually need to work on the problems, and we haven't really addressed those. We need to have more champions, and I do think that artists and sports people need to get more involved in working on these problems. Because yes, they get pulled out. I mean, you talk about a sporting personality, and they come from roots in the township. They have gone through, so they would understand what it needs to happen to get them to an international platform.
Okay, we will certainly pick up on some of those aspects in a moment. I want to get some of the other guests as well on the same thought in terms of the panel. Right, just your quick thought: sports, art, culture, and let me put it this way, and I'll throw it in. So, with hindsight, I love my sport, just so that you know that. South Africa was manipulated to get back, and I'm virtually quoting, if not verbatim, I'm reflecting government policy, ANC policy around 1992, that let us appease white South Africa by giving them the thing that they loved the most, which is cricket and rugby, because they were really strong teams in those sports, and the Olympic Games. Give them that. They will see us as very kind black faces. Essentially, because we're not hard guys anymore, we're just wonderful faces. Let us give it to them. The question is, do you think, that's certainly what happened, and I'm not quoting verbatim, but that's the essence, right? With hindsight, was that fatally flawed? Because it gave a sense of a temporary unity, going back to that theme of creating unity in the country.
Look, I think it's important to sometimes take some small steps, and sometimes you just have to build friendship with people, or simply just listen to people in order to build a relationship. So I don't I don't discount that completely. However, I do think it must be problematized because I think, and Andile might say more about this, when it was the first year commemoration after Marikana, I think they planned a whole sports day with some rugby and some soccer. I think rugby in the morning and soccer in the afternoon or something. And I was very worried about that because I thought, I mean, this is now, we're supposed to be commemorating the deaths of people. And here you are coming with this plan to try to unite us. I mean, I think it's a cynical way of using sport to try to create some kind of social cohesion. So I do think we must be careful. I do think we must be careful. I earlier on talked about the Palestine Museum.
But isn't that the point? That we're almost giving, it's like giving a kid a toy to say, you're making a bit of a noise, let me give you a toy, play with it. And essentially that's being replicated over and over and over again. Yes. Isn't that the case?
Yes, well, and that's what I'm saying. I think we must be very careful that we don't repeat that. So let me just quickly say this thing, and I'm really glad that you spoke about art. At the Palestine Museum, we are sending several people over to Palestine in the next few weeks to go and paint 14 Stations of the Cross. It's a long story. But eventually what will happen is that these 14 Stations of the Cross will hang in the Palestine Museum. Now, some people might have difficulty with that, but I do think it's an interesting art project because, you know, many people think of Palestine as being Muslim and so on and so forth. So here's a way of bringing something of a Christian message into this museum and allowing different kind of people to enter the museum, to look at this, to reflect and to critique and so on and so forth. So I think there are certain interesting projects that certainly art and also sport and so on can be used for in order to build some kind of social cohesion. Okay, but we must be careful, I want to stress, we must be careful that we don't use it to appease and cynically employ it. We must be very careful.
So can be used, but can it be the be-all and end-all? I'll get thoughts from Maulana Abbas and Kiza. Go ahead, your thoughts on that theme?
Well, I think, Ashraf, yes, I've related with Madiba saying that we can unite this country through sport and music. However, I think it is precisely what you have alluded to. In giving a child a toy in hope that he'll just be silent, it's a temporary measure. Yes, it has its potential.
Do tweet that, by the way, just so that you know.
It does have its impact on bringing us together as communities. It has a potential of breaking certain barriers and creating some levels of trust to engage in serious issues. But it cannot in its own right be a solution to issues of uniting the country.
Okay. Andile, go ahead.
Those who are old enough would remember, I think it was Sarkozy had the slogan, no normal sport in an abnormal society. Now, you know, I think soccer in particular has become the new opium of the masses. To keep our people busy and away from, and also, of course, it lets steam off so that we don't organize and confront the problems that society faces. I think it's a bit evil that sports in South Africa has been used in the manner that it has. I mean, really now. White guys going to play rugby in Soweto and black people singing Shosholoza. And then each go back home to their blackness and their whiteness. Whoever conceived this idea must be a very cynical person to think that this somehow can help us. It won't. Now, but I think in terms of culture in general, yesterday I was in a meeting. Next year is the 40th anniversary of the Soweto uprising, and one of the things that we discussed is how the cultural sphere was used as part of resistance. Culture for resistance. For me, that's the culture that is my culture. I don't know any other of these cultures. My culture is a culture of resistance to help me as a black person in a world that hates me to liberate myself. That is my culture, right? We're thinking about how we remember June 16 next year to go the cultural route. People don't know that, for instance, people like Sirini Moodley were activists, but were creating cultural products such as theater pieces. I like to go back to those and actually read establish those as a way of remembering. But there was also visual art. But all this stuff was about fundamentally questioning the South African society to help us free ourselves, not to cover up this great injustice and create a false sense of unity through sports. And I think it's time we critique these things. Why do you want us to play soccer when we are landless? Isn't that the question?
And ironically, as you're talking, Mamelodi Sundowns are playing against Ajax Cape Town and decided to, and they're fighting all over the grounds. It's like, why must they play in Port Elizabeth? So that's the irony of the debate that we have. And this game probably starts in the next 5 minutes or whatever the case may be. Anyway, right. Okay, quick one with all of you, then we'll move on. So, this question, are we the Rainbow Nation? Abbas, let me start with you.
No, I don't think so. We are not yet there. Yes, the concept is embraced by everyone, and we are all in the belief that we should be a rainbow nation. But again, with the scourges of inequality and the racial divides that we find ourselves in, to date, will suggest and does suggest that we are not yet there, but we should inspire.
Okay, so we're not your thoughts? You're looking very rainbowish, by the way. I'm looking at the flag in the background, so you've come closest to that anyway in terms of graphic demonstration. Yeah.
No, I just think that culture has such a. Well, I'm responding to Haim Jess. I work predominantly with traditional craft people, and what's happened with us is, as a society, we're looking west. And I know what Andile is saying, but essentially most people, and even now, it was that way under apartheid, and even now, we look west. West is best, and we want to emulate what everyone else is doing and what they are wearing in the West. And I just think it's so important to make what we have cool.
Okay. But overall, are we the Rainbow Nation?
No.
Okay.
No,
Andile?
I think I've already said that we are an anti-black, white supremacist, racist society. And I think that we can go into that. I look at, for instance, interesting statistics, shocking. South Africa, we murder about 17,000 black men annually. Now, that is more people that have been killed than in war zones. If you look at the infant mortality rate, so this is racism without racism. I mean, and that is the kind of thing that we don't look at. We are more interested in individual acts of racism. Oh, these kids at, I don't know, roads, wherever, they're beating this black guy and so on. But the structural reality of the black condition in this country is simply that we can't claim to have a rainbow nation. Maybe 20 years later we can be rude and say to Archbishop Desmond Tutu, that idea of yours is nonsensical and very costly to black people.
Would you like to say that now?
I will absolutely.
Because if somebody tweets it, you are going to
absolutely. No, it is nonsensical.
So that is
very
nonsensical.
costly idea that we have a rainbow nation when we have not resolved.
You say very costly. What does it cost us?
Because what it has done is to suspend the questions that we are raising today. It suspended the question of reparations, suspended the question of who owns South Africa. Why don't we have land? Why are we buying back our land? This is all stolen property. But this kind of articulation was not possible because we had to sustain a lie. Okay, we are all together. And of course, we have Nelson and Desmond, the two fathers of the nation, who smiles and make us cry. But don't resolve the problem. This is the issue for me. So when I say maybe it's time to be rude, is to go back to those questions. Desmond, that thing of yours of rainbow was not going to work, and it does not work, and it's 20 years later now. Can we go back to the real questions of reparations? Khoisan people were decimated in this country in a genocidal violence, and we have no conversation about this, right? We are not claiming reparations. We are not saying black people in this country were very, and I say black, I from a black consciousness perspective, so-called colored, so-called Indians and Africans, and I know all of us don't actually want to be black, but no, for good reason. It's tough to be black, so I understand that. Right?
I was going to suggest, if anything, many are insulted by being called, colored and Indian now, because they were all black. And now this phrase called black African is a major divider. It never existed in our time when we were, pre-1990.
If I were to jump in, just to say that one of the things that we've lost as a result of the ANC taking over and denigrating their consciousness is precisely this capacity to imagine ourselves as one people. I was not there, I was young, but I know when I read that so-called colored people and so-called Indian people, in the 70s, when Biko and his friends were able to influence and hegemony in society, they saw themselves as black. They were not part of a minority. My own party calls people minorities. So-called colored people or so-called Indians and are part of the black majority. We're a majority. We have the same problems. We're oppressed by the same system. It divided us for its own reasons. Black consciousness answered that by saying, we don't accept the separations created by the enemy. We're all black and we all must unite against the thing that oppresses us. Okay. But we have lost that. Now we are Indian and Xhosa. I see that Xhosa is a thing now.
Yes. All right. Your thoughts on the Rainbow Nation, Reverend?
I was very listening to that last comment about us being all part of the black majority. The fact is we are not, but it's good to have something aspirational. So there's nothing wrong with saying, with using an image like a rainbow and saying that is what we should be aspiring to. Because if you're going to say that we are all black, and quite clearly there are some of my family members who would be completely insulted if I say they are black, which I do, and I know they feel insulted. So, and it's true. I mean, unfortunately, there's so much racism even within our families. So having something aspirational, I think there's nothing wrong with that. We should be able to aspire to something. And I think if one really were to get to some conceptual clarity as well, those of us, I mean, if you know how a rainbow gets formed, you have this combination of darkness and light and storm and all of that. And I think all of that together eventually make up the rainbow. So I don't think a rainbow must be seen as a gentle thing that's just hanging there in the air. No, it comes about through a particular process of light and darkness. And our society is very much a combination of that light and darkness. So I mean, we can do with the image of the rainbow that we want to, but I do think we need to first understand it, and then also understand how, when we speak about other things, how that's in fact exactly the same as this particular concept.
Okay, and just to tell the audience as well, when we have a chance, we're going to get questions just now. I mean, there's been comments made by the panel, and well, Andile specifically, effectively has knocked Nelson Mandela, and he'll probably do it again. I mean, because he's done it before. And Bishop Tutu, what I'm saying is, if you feel that he's talking nonsense, for goodness sake, you get a chance, get up and tell us why. I'm not here to protect him. I want you to know that these are big guys. They prepare and they protect themselves. I'll get to you just now, right? What I'm saying, you can argue that point just now to say, how can you say that? What was the alternative? Have Syria, for example, have Iraq, have that sort of, hey, winner take all. It can come to that just now. We'll talk about it later on, and I'd love to talk about it. Okay, so if we say we're not the Rainbow Nation, you see, is the point then, I'll just stay with us for 1 second, is the point that, and I understand rainbow is just graphic, it's just a bit of playing around with color, but even then, when Bishop Tutu said we are the Rainbow Nation, should even then not governments have come on board to say, no, actually not, because rainbow reflects multi-colors. We're a rainbow, we're a nation of no color, because color is what divided us in the first place. We are actually one nation, and if we're not yet one nation, our target must be to the one nation. What I'm asking, therefore, is in the lack of response by government or the ANC at that time, there was a sense of acquiescence already, saying, this is very, very pretty, just move on. Now, have we paid the price for that? That means not playing up. And it goes back to the point we made now. There was white and there was black in South Africa. Then there were white people who were progressive, and then there were many people who were part of the struggle. And black was always one big shade of black, with some different shades, essentially black. And suddenly, past 94, there was sort of almost, if you look at India, there's the caste system, like who's more pure than the other. So certain ranges of black were more pure, or more black, and others were less. That sort of crept into the system now. My point is, as we move on to how we can achieve unity, and Maulana Abbas, I'll get to you first here. Your thoughts on that did we not make the mistake already? From the first day to say, we are not the Rainbow Nation. We want to be one nation, irrespective of colors, so don't come and say we multi-colors. Don't even worry about what we look like. It's what we're thinking, and we're all thinking behind moving towards that one South African goal.
Well, I think, Ashraf, if you relate to the circumstances that prevail at the time, in my personal view, well, I'm not a politician and I'm not actually even advocating for any political view on your question. But to my understanding, the idea was to bring to our cognizance the fact that we are a multicultural society and we are equally diversified in our nature. And if we are to perhaps build a rainbow nation, that should be our point of departure, to identify with who we are. It is not a situation of simple black and white as it was, where apartheid united us against one particular color. And the birth of democracy brought these new dimensions in the terrain, where now we have to really identify ourselves with who we are in terms of our diversity and the kind of challenges that we have, and we have to confront within that diversity.
Okay. But you see, some may say, and I'll put this to Andile now, that in terms of our diversity, yes, we have South Africans who are of Dutch stock, South Africans of British stock, South Africans from an Asian or Pakistani or whatever background, and then this group called colored, whatever that really means, right? And then, of course, what has been termed Bantu, and then African, and then the point made about the Khoisan, and they have their own battle, almost like they've just been ignored. All those people enough, maybe left with a couple, then the other immigrants all make up this country, right? So that and their cultures is what keeps us distinct. But I want to go back to that point. What makes us similar, even in 1992 or 94, right, is every one of us, irrespective of our religion or our language or what we look like, everyone wanted peace. Everybody wanted land. Everybody wanted to be wealthy. Everybody wanted their children to have good education. Everybody wanted to have 3 square meals a day. Everybody wanted to have good clothing. Nobody wanted to live in squatter camps. Nobody wanted to have township grounds that are all dust, which has been the case for the last 50 years. Everybody wanted to have rooms that doesn't leak. What I'm saying is what distinguishes us in terms of our cultures is far less than what joins us in terms of what we all actually want. And it doesn't matter whether you're white or you're black, it actually is irrelevant. And that's the part that hasn't been played up. So, Andile, I want to go back then to that original point you made, which is when we talk about uniting the country, that initial point, so what actually divides us?
Okay, I mean, I think that, it's because I think in black and white in my mind. I mean, this is clear. Some people have problems with it. I have no problems with that. Because that's how the world is organized. If you are a young boy in America, the US, you get shot. Not because you have committed a crime, but because you're black and you're in the wrong place. So the world understands my blackness. When I speak Yoruba or Zulu or Xhosa, that is inconsequential. Whether I have some kind of religion or whatever, that is inconsequential. The world is racist, and for me, I would imagine this is what we should be focusing at. Not these kind of divisions of, I don't know, the different languages speak, because they are really inconsequential. When apartheid oppressed us here, it was never a question of culture. It was a question of these guys are black and we oppress them, and we are white, and that is why it's interesting. No one talks about white people in these terms, dividing them, you German or you English or whatsoever. We accept that the white supremacist approach is going to treat them as an entity. What I find disturbing though is this idea that through cultural tolerance we can accept, say, racist ideas or tribalist ideas like your family. Mm-hmm. Your family is clearly tribalist, backward, and politically in a very dangerous zone. It is not for you to tolerate that identity I would imagine our job as progressive people is to then challenge that identity. It's not, I mean, imagine if my family members were to say, as some of them do, oh, the Zulus are like this and that, because we cost us speaking. My job is to say, you are mad. I correct that. I don't say, oh, my family, we have these people. No. Those are reactionary members of the family and they must be brought to consciousness. They must be assisted, not tolerated. There is no, I don't think we have a problem of culture in this country. This idea that there's a cultural problem, no. We have a problem of racism, of white supremacy, of dispossession and injustice. And it is clear who are victims and who are beneficiaries. So, we talk as if it is a confusing matter. No, it isn't. If you're white kid born today in South Africa, it is given that you'll end up at university, you will become a manager, you will probably own property. It is a given for the majority of them, in general terms. Why? It's because of outcome of historical process. And that historical process makes sure that if you're white, you're protected, you have privileges. If you're black, on the other hand, it's a very difficult situation.
Okay, so to go back to that original question, which is transforming society and uniting the country. And I'm asking, so how do we transform society? How do we unite the country? I'll run to the other guy. Let's start with you. You've already made the point about land and dispossession and Khoisan and all that things. So what's your solution now? Because I've been told, find some solution and give it back to us. What's your solution, Andile?
The solution is part of accepting the analysis of what the problem is. If we can't agree on the problem, then we can continue running around like we do and avoiding the question. My key proposition is that we have to go to 1652, with the arrival of the white settler and what they do to create a modern South Africa. It cannot be natural that we accept it, that black people in this country live in squatter camps and in townships. And every morning, if you come from black townships, as most of us should, you see how our people move out of township to go to get work, and then they come back to the living space. We are providers of cheap labor. This is the reality of the past.
Okay, but that's the reality. And
Yeah.
I think so. I won't repeat because we all know that.
Yeah.
What's the solution?
The solution for me is then to redistribute land. I mean, that's a very obvious one. And as the party that I belong to says, land expropriation without compensation. This land must be given to black people, and of course anyone else who needs it, without paying a cent, because all land is stolen property in this country. For me, that will be a big part of creating the solution. Second is seriously considering the question of reparations for what has happened here. It cannot be right. I mean, that you have a system that systematically has done what it does, and we have no reparations. And the Khoisan people, by the way, I'm Khoisan myself. I speak, if you listen to my surname, I mean, the click, and if you look at my flat nose also, So there must be a serious conversation about, in fact, I spoke to the UJ students and they said to me, shouldn't we also compute the quantum of what it means for the labor, cheap forced labor that black people have forced to give? Because you can't do that. The nice thing about the apartheid and colonial project in this country is that they kept records. So we know exactly.
Okay, I'm going to interrupt you. I hear that. I mean, you have this idealistic view. And then what? What I'm saying, so you're going to divide it, and I'm not going into EFF speak, you're not there anymore, but I mean this plan of give back what was never theirs. And I agree with the analogy that's been mentioned by many other people, which is somebody comes, steals your car, right, keeps the car, and then after 1 year the cops find the car, and then tells you if you want the car back, you need to buy it. I mean, that's, and the other, I mean, you've used...
No, but for me, it's a very simple thing. The land
what,
is a simple thing.
What happens next? But Adile, what happens next? What I'm saying, so you're going to cut up the land, because at some stage you also want the land to exist. You want, I'm giving you an example, and I made the point earlier on about Syria. At the moment, who actually cares who's right and wrong in Syria? I don't know. Does it actually matter at this point in time? Yeah. Lebanon, same example. Afghanistan, you can debate. I mean, the whole Palestinian issue, we know that most of us are absolutely on side in terms of the struggle, but as we debate it, that entire land, generations are affected. Now, and I want to put this to the others as well, but let me get this from you first. So we resolve it, yeah. We say we're going to cut it up, but is it okay if you win the justice, but you lose the peace?
No,
how much of
but that is the only way you can have peace. That's why in Palestine, there's no peace without justice. All of that land must return to the Palestinian people. That's the basis for peace. Otherwise, you have a lie. And then you're going to have what we have in South Africa, kids throwing poo on the roads, and then the same kids being punished. It's a shocking thing happening in the DCT. The same guy who led that strike, by the way, that struggle, is now being persecuted by the university. They call him a racist. And what I found even more disturbing is they're using the Bremner House, which the students occupied and call it Azania House, to actually persecute this guy. I'm just saying that if you have this kind of thing that you're suggesting now, oh, it is too complicated to say the Palestinians must have all their land. We must have some kind of justice.
So we must you say you don't agree
There
with
is no,
compromise.
the only basis of lasting peace is justice.
Okay, that's
And
your point.
in our case,
Right.
the land.
Let me run through it. We all know about the inequalities. I don't even need anybody to repeat it. I think it's a given. Maulana Abbas made the point about issues in the townships and also issues of corruption and all that. And I think you've made the point again upfront about it, right, Reverend? But as I run through all of you, let me start with you on this one. So Anita's given his view. I'm saying we've got the problem. We want unity, we want peace, we want justice, we want all those things. How are we going to get it? And I know you're asked, but I'm just wondering, you're also a South African, how are you going to get it?
I feel that we need to start at home. Basically, with the economic situation as it is, the majority of children are not taken care of in a two-parent home, even a single-parent home, because of the realities of the economy right now. But if we could create projects in the neighborhoods that are meaningful, so people are happy with what they do have, they are able to meaningfully contribute, and we can start dialogue in that way. With the children, I think that community activities and community centers was a good idea. We started that with arts and culture, but unfortunately, it's not been a program that has really run too well. But if we revisit that, I think one of the major problems that we encountered with a lot of the projects I've done in audit in the Eastern Cape of some of the projects that they've started there, it's the culture of entitlement. We don't have enough volunteers working in there and prepared to do the groundwork without being paid. And if we can do that, and we can start on a localized level and get people proud of...
And that could transform society and get that elusive.
I think neighborhoods. Yes, I think neighborhoods.
What's your thoughts? Maulana Abbas?
Well, Ansharaf, if you look at the political terrain, again, the issue of land, yes, I agree. Apartheid was not reconciled on the basis that what was taken from the people was not returned to them. And for as long as people will not have access to what is rightfully theirs, I think there will be no political reconciliation on that front. But as civil society, who find ourselves within this global system, we can play our role where possible. Especially in South Africa, we know that we belong to a racially...
But how do we play that role as civil society?
On basic things, the things that we do every day to just do it better. Skills sharing, for an example. To share our skills. We do know this country, the biggest challenge is poverty. And where as a community, if as a Muslim community, we advocate for a position and we unite on one front, mobilize and synergize where possible to achieve basic things like your economic activities. Some of you are big in business. Share with the people and create, close the gaps of that divide, where people can begin to see you differently as brothers. And we begin perhaps to influence even government. We've got our own Sharia, we've got our own Islamic ethos and teachings. Why can't we take these and reach out to the rest of society?
Right, that's your for the last. We'll get to. We'll get to the audience next up. Right, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. In my initial remarks, I made it clear what my position is because we were asked to say what are the solutions are. Let me just repeat that. It is about building a strong civil society movement, a united civil society movement in this country.
Outside of government.
Outside of government. Civil society implies that, in any case.
But are we therefore saying that effectively government's not working in achieving our aims? So civil society, which is very strong in the anti-apartheid struggle, we know that, has got to now come back and take up that leadership position and effectively agitate against government to get what we all need for our country.
Well, it's part of that's only part of what civil society should then do. I mean, civil society should do many other things, but a strong, united civil society movement is in a way the only answer in this country. I don't know why we are struggling to build this. I was talking about AHA and how to, if the way I think of it, let's just quickly say this. I think of when you build a mall. When you build a mall, you think of anchor tenants. You cannot build a mall without anchor tenants. So if the church, for example, is one anchor tenant within the civil society mall, the Muslim community is another anchor tenant, the labor movement is another anchor tenant, and so on. It is when those movements then begin to see those grouping with this, how do we cooperate? How do we collaborate? How do we connect? How do we do these things? And only when we are able to build this movement and make these connections, make these collaborations, it's only then that we are going to be able to do all these wonderful things that we talk about. Because you see, we'll be able to put a certain amount of pressure on our government. You'll be able to put pressure on all kinds of forces out there that hold the society ransom and captive at the moment. But you cannot do that. I really want to emphasize this. You cannot do that if you don't have a united civil society movement.
Okay, so within a sense that come 1994, that we voted in a new government, a very representative government, and therefore let them get on with their job. And there's a realization now, and I think the civil unrest sort of confirmed that actually we still need to vote and elect governments, but in fact, we need to agitate against them, right, to ensure that they deliver in terms of what we want them to do. Right, this is what I want to do now. We've got about 20 odd minutes to go, right? So the original brief was, where's the runners with the mics? Have we got the runners with the mic? Do we have how many? One or two? One. I was hoping you had two. Okay. If you've got two, just give the one to whoever's raising their hands and check who else is next so we can speed up the process, right? So there's already two people. There's like 10 here, but what I'm saying, I'm going to leave it to you to follow up, right? Okay. Now, this is what I want to do because I want to do it radio and TV style and not university lecture room style. So, the brief was take 5 questions at a time and get the panel to answer the questions. I want to change the rules. I think it doesn't work. I think I want accountability to the person immediately. So what I'd like is this. I don't want commentary. I really don't want commentary. I want one specific question and tell me who must answer it. And that person must answer it. And if we can do that in 1 minute flat, question and answer, it means we can go through 20 questions as opposed to 7 or 8, which is the plan. I don't want to do the 7 or 8. I want to be, I see the people in front of me, right? Okay, so who's first up? You're going to help me with checking, right? Now, whoever you've given the mics to so far. Okay, so he's starting. He's next. The moment he's done, if you can quickly go to the next person. I'll leave it to you to decide, right? You're in charge for that. Right, go ahead. So don't forget, don't forget you're going to direct it.
This is me first. Okay.
Okay, so don't forget to direct it to one person only. We're going to get an answer immediately. So QA all the time and we can run through. Right, go ahead.
I'd like to address the question to Abbas Mkhize, please. Kamal Salasa from Voice of the Cape, by the way. In the context of the Muslim community, we know there's often irreconcilable differences based on ideological positions. But in South Africa, there is an added dimension of racial differences as well. I'd just like to know your experiences regarding unity with the broader Muslim community in South Africa at the moment. I think that would provide something quite good for us to work on.
Thanks for that. Right, go ahead. And the plan is give the answer, but short answers as opposed to long, drawn ones. Right, go ahead.
Yes, I think what we call this Islam in South Africa is very unfortunate that it is defined by ethnic basis. And as such, these ethnicities seek to dominate the other. And perhaps, and this is my experience, and perhaps moving forward in taking us as a community, we need to dismantle. I think we're still stuck in the apartheid racial systems that have formulated the reality that we find ourselves in, that hampers the progress of ours as a community going forward.
Okay, got that. Thanks. Right, next one.
Assalamu alaikum. My question is to former fighter Andy Lemzadam. My question is, how honest are you being? You mentioned that you're using the Speak Up Black term, and you put Indian, colored, African under one banner. How honest in an post-apartheid South Africa are you being in saying that in your own discourse, right? Because I mean, we know the discursive formations from apartheid.
Okay, I got that. You asked him how.
Okay,
let him answer that. That's all.
Send us home shattered and not appease us. That's all I'm saying.
Okay, let him go ahead. Right, just do me a favor. Just check who else is raising their hand so they can go back. And there's people on this side as well and on that side too. Right, go ahead, Andile.
No.
And the women as well.
My question is to add on to his.
Oh no, wait. You've got the one. Let's get the answer. Okay. I want to do this so we can move on.
I regard you as black, and if you have doubts about that, it is a reflection on you, not me. I'm totally with Srinimudi and Biko, and I know what happened at the time. You have to try to read the records a little bit and see. Black conscience, Sasso. These guys are deep in Durban and such places, and they actually imagine themselves as black. We can't do that, and we must do that. Otherwise, I'll tell you what is happening now in Durban. We have this, even my own comrades from EFF. I say Indians are taking our land or whatever. It's completely crazy, this idea that, but without the clarity of politics, we're going to end up fighting each other on the basis of tribal small identities like that. So it is not stupid of Bigo to create this. And I said, that identity of blackness necessarily trumps. Bigo was clear there are divisions created by apartheid amongst us. But we say these guys oppress us and they divide us. We refuse to accept their divisions. That is why we create ourselves in an identity to oppose them.
Okay, got that. Just by the way, when you ask questions with the runners, please check that we are representative. I want males, females, young, old, across the board, right? But also stick with the theme. Okay?
System that's not strong enough. And what we find is we're dealing with the symptoms of it. And my question really is, how do we bring about substantive transformation, not just bringing down statues? You know, I'm talking curriculum transformation, language policy reconsideration. How do we actually change things on the ground as students? Because we're finding that we're just dealing with the symptoms and not the roots of the problem.
Okay, got that. Okay, who should answer that question? Okay, okay, go ahead.
I thought it wasn't mine, so I was very happy you asked the question. No, and I think that we have to go back precisely to the nature of South African society. Just like the sport, non-normal sports in abnormal society, I don't believe we can transform university in a racist society. And that is why I think students, particularly those who come into radical consciousness, has to pose themselves first as black before the students. And then to understand that Adam Habib is a functionary of a larger system. He is not doing that thing for himself. You can't go fight against Adam Habib and say Viva ANC on the other hand, because Adam Habib operates within a framework created by the ANC. The same with what's happening in Rhodes and UCT. You will not win that battle if it is not a battle for the transformation of actual society outside of the university. The university only reflects real society outside of the university, but it can become a nucleus from which we generate these big ideas again of radical change and supporting community. Like, we can't have that struggle and not link to the community struggles outside of the university.
And Andile, at that point, how do we actually finally transform? Because I think the question is almost similar to what I said. We're giving the kids the toys now to appease them and they're having fun. But dramatic transformation, how do we actually do that?
No, but I mean, in her articulation of the question, already we know there's a curriculum problem. There is the issue of the culture, institutional racism in these universities. And my argument is that you are not going to transform VET if you don't transform society, including the situation of workers who are slaves at VET. But it is a law passed by a national government that makes it possible for workers to be treated and paid like that. So it is not Adam Habib. Of course, Adam Habib can be a nicer guy. You could say to any company that comes to VET, you will pay these people this minimum wage. You will not pay them slave wages. I'm sure they can do that. But Adam is going to say, it's already said, but I am just following the national legislation. So they have this forest to hide at, which is created by the national politics. We must go back to I'm black before I'm a student, and I'm going to transform that to transform society. You can't have the situation there at UCT. They bring down the statue of Rhodes, right? I support that. It's very important. But you can't stop there. You have to go and define the city itself as anti-black, the province itself as anti-black, and then locate yourself in the margins of the Western Cape. Otherwise, I don't think we can win this battle. All I'm saying is, unfortunately, it's not a civil society issue. It's a deeply revolutionary political question. If civil society doesn't understand that, we're just going back to pre-1994 and organizing soup kitchens and not dealing with what creates poverty, what creates exclusion. It's a political policy decision of the ruling classes.
Okay.
In the political class.
We got that. Just by the way, with the other panelists, if there's a question directed to someone and you feel you have something that you want to add to that, just raise your hands and do so. Anybody wants to add to what Andile said on the transformation in terms of universities, etc.? No. Okay. Next up.
My name is Ashok.
Sorry. Okay. Just hold it there 1 second. Go ahead.
Well, mine is very simple. Andila only sees through black and white. Yes, perhaps it's justified within the point of view that he holds, but as Muslims, this is our conference, Muslim Civil Society Conference, and we have a concept of an ummah. And the ummah that we are failing ourselves within our internal structures, where we are failing to show brotherhood in practice, it will be almost impossible for us to then influence society on issues of integrations and cohesion